Thank you so much, Donna and Stephanie, for inviting me. I'm using the height here. I just need to be down close to you, but my students know that sometimes I get a little carried away, so I have to use cards so I stay on track. And they prayed for me, so I'm going to. So I want to really tell you, I do appreciate you trusting me with this time, because as we all know, time is precious. And we don't have a lot of time. And that's my question tonight to you. How much time do we have, and what can we do to make the most of the time that we have? Every Easter we're reminded of a man who came and spent less than 37 years and made a difference in our lives. Now, we can't really compare our lives to his life because, of course, what he did, our lives pale in comparison. But we have that amount of time, and we're here for God's glory. And so I ask you again, how much time do you have, and what are you doing with it? When we consider the fact that the Bible tells us we're here for God's glory, what are we doing for his glory? Are we taking care of our Father's work? Are we taking care of his business? Or are we just kind of into our own? Our days are numbered. No doubt about it. How do we know? What is the right time for anything? I had you read the entire chapter, because how do we know what the right time for any of the things that we do is? How do we make those decisions? We have the Bible for guidance. Like money, our lives are an investment in something. Don't they gain value with every passing day? The way that we grow and enrich each other's lives, the kinds of things that we do to help one another, to serve one another, doesn't that add value? I know I've got a lot of character lines, and I don't know if it adds value, but it sure is a reflection of something. So what is our net worth as a Christian? How do we determine that? Is it by the number of days that we live? Or is it by the results? Is it by our works? Is it by the amount of money in our checking account? Is it the number of acres that we own, or the number of things that we have? Well, we know that's not true. But what are the things that we are doing? How are they gaining value? How do we demonstrate our worth? Tonight, I'd just like to share a little bit of what I feel is the value that is accumulated in my life through some of the experiences that I've had. I feel it's an investment for the Lord and his work. And I know that everything I should do should be for his glory. But we all know that we do some things for ourselves. I mean, when I get stressed out from school, I go home. I was, before my accident, just jump on the horse and take off by myself. That wasn't for anybody else's glory. That was just to de-stress. Okay? Or I go out and I pull weeds in the garden. Or I strip furniture and refinish that. Something to get rid of that stress. Those are my God moments. I need a little bit of that self-centered time to just kind of get away from the world and get rid of the tension so that I can redirect my energy. And I know we all do that. But tonight, I'm going to use some rocks because they're natural. God put them here for something. What do we use them for? Are they instruments? Are they just taking up space? They sure get in the way of the plow. There's an awful lot of rocks. If you go down to Kentucky, you see them all lined up, that flat rock, and they made them in fences for miles and miles, and they're just beautiful. And when the slaves stacked those, there had to be a purpose, right? Well, I'm going to use them to symbolize how God has filled my life with blessings. Now, the picture we'll just call my life, okay, so far. It's a little picture because I'm not that old. I'm getting there, but I'm not that old. But he's filled my life beyond measure with the blessings in life. To begin with, I was born a Christian. I say that because we know he knew us before we were even born. The Bible tells us that. And I was born into a Christian family. My parents literally were such a strong part of our church that when our church burned down when I was 10 years old and we're standing in the churchyard, it was about 11 o'clock Christmas Eve night, because my brother had gone up to, we had an old coal furnace, and he went up and he lit the fire and came back We had supper so that it could warm up so we could put the tree up. And we used to put up, it was one of the traditional white churches that is on every Christmas card every year. And so we used to get a tree that was at least 20 foot high. And let me tell you, it was always very enjoyable doing that tree. It was an entire evening of just bliss because the whole church family decorated it. And then we always had treats afterwards, a meal, and of course dessert. And when that church burned down and we were all standing there sobbing in the churchyard, I just remember my mother saying, "We'll build it again." And she did. And my mother and father built the little church that we have now out of love. We had no money. The church was not insured. And the money that they came up with was literally out of the pockets of our 30 plus members. We didn't have very many members in that church. But what we have right now is a nice, sweet little brown church. And I hauled the steeple from Muscatine, Iowa on the top of my 67 Plymouth Belvedere, straight up Highway 80, all the way up 31. And the only problem we had was loading that into a van to get it from Muscatine to Washington, Iowa, where we lived. We did it with my husband's friend. He had a rental van. He used to run around with all these seed racks, and he said, "We'll just put it in the van." Well, they put it through the windshield of the van. So at any rate, we got some pretty good looks in Chicago when we were trying to make it through traffic. A steeple was longer than the car, of course. But we got it up there, and again, they were very strong members of the church. And so I consider that my first blessing, that I was born into a Christian family. Another blessing was when we lost the church. You don't think about that being a blessing, but I was only 10 years old, and it made a profound impact on my life because we had to visit another church. So when we were going to our sister church, I got to know an awful lot more kids because our kids were the only kids in the church at that time, and there were 6 of us and sometimes 2 other kids. But we were in each other's lives a lot because my family was pretty poor, and we had to do chores together, which meant my brother squirting milk on my back because he was always, it seems, behind me when we were milking cows. The manure never seemed to totally make it off the trailer when we were shoveling manure off the trailer onto the field. And I have more than my share of pitchfork holes in my legs when we'd get into the manure fights. I know that sounds pretty gross, but I consider it a blessing again because of the bonds that I have with my family, and not just my own family, but my church family. Very important. I also consider it a blessing to have gone to Grace Christian Church on Grace Road in Benzonia, Michigan. Tiny little church. I do have to tell you that my nickname when I was a kid was Grace. My brother still calls me Grace once in a while when I fall down the stairs. And most recently when I broke my leg on the horse, he said, "It wasn't the horse's fault, was it?" And I said, "No, it was mine." Took the horse across the road. But I count it a blessing that those things happen because we know until we've been in the valleys, we don't know when we're on the mountaintops. So we need those low points too to really appreciate life. If you've never been in northern Michigan, that's God's country. Trees, rivers, it's unbelievable. It's so beautiful that I invite you all to come up and go camping with me anytime. Benzonia, Michigan, real easy to find. Just follow the lake up, and right here at right at the edge, I'm only 5 miles off Lake Michigan. So if you just get to Grace Road and you come up the big hill, we're at the top of the big hill. There's only one big hill, and then you're going down toward Lake Michigan. So just stop when you get to the big hill. A blessing to live there. Okay?